Across the rolling savannas of southern Africa, nestled between granite hills and open plains, lies a city of stone. Its walls rise tall, curving and bending like waves frozen in time. They were built without mortar, yet they have stood for centuries. When European explorers first stumbled upon them in the 19th century, they could not believe that Africans had built such monuments. Some whispered that the Queen of Sheba had left them here. Others claimed they were the ruins of King Solomon's mines or the biblical city of Ophir. But the truth, as archaeology and oral traditions later revealed, is far richer. These walls belonged to the people of the Shona. They were the heart of a thriving kingdom, one that commanded gold, ivory, and trade routes stretching across oceans. It was a kingdom that connected the African interior to Arabia, to India, and even to China. This is the story of Great Zimbabwe, a story of ingenuity, power, wealth, and resilience. A story hidden for centuries, denied by colonizers, but never erased. Let's dive in. Nearly 1,000 years ago, around the year 1100, communities of farmers and herders thrived in the high plateau of southern Africa. The land was fertile, rivers flowed steadily, and granite outcrops provided strong foundations. Here, the ancestors of the Shona people built their settlements. They were skilled in farming sorghum and millet, raising cattle, smelting iron, and shaping tools. And as generations passed, they began to build something greater. Stone by stone, they raised walls. At first small enclosures, then larger compounds, and finally vast complexes of granite rising from the earth. The city they built was called Zimbabwe, House of Stone, and it would become Great Zimbabwe, the heart of a kingdom that once commanded the southern reaches of Africa. Let's dig deeper. The architecture of this city was unlike anything in the region. Without mortar, the Shona builders stacked granite blocks so precisely that the walls have endured for centuries. The Great Enclosure, the largest ancient stone structure in sub-Saharan Africa, stretched nearly 800 feet in circumference. Its walls reached up to 36 feet in height. Within its embrace stood the mysterious conical tower, a massive stone structure with no doors or windows. It was never meant to be entered. Instead, it was a symbol, a monument to prosperity, authority, and the fertility of the land. High above the valley stood the hill complex, where rulers lived and governed. From its granite heights, kings could gaze across the valley, watching over the city and its people. Below in the valley itself stretched the homes of thousands of residents, clusters of stone enclosures, each one a household, each one a piece of a larger puzzle. And what a puzzle it was! Estimates suggest that at its height, Great Zimbabwe was home to as many as 20,000 or even 30,000 people. This was no village, it was a city, a hub of power and trade. So where did this power come from? Let's dig deeper still. Wealth in Great Zimbabwe rested on three pillars: cattle, gold, and trade. Cattle were everything. They were food, wealth, status, and even spiritual symbols. The size of a man's herd defined his position in society. For the king, vast herds represented his authority, a living treasury grazing on the plains. But cattle alone could not explain the kingdom's reach. It was gold, bright, malleable, and eternally valuable, that brought Great Zimbabwe into the global stage. The goldfields of southern Africa were rich, and Shona miners knew how to extract the precious metal. Caravans carried it northward, where it reached the Swahili coast. From ports like Sofala and Kilwa, Arab and Persian traders transporting it across the Indian Ocean. Chinese porcelain, Persian glass beads, and Arab coins have been found at Great Zimbabwe, proof of its connections to distant worlds. Imagine the scene. Merchants from the coast arriving with glass beads shimmering in the sun, with woven cloth dyed in bright colors, with coins minted far from Africa. Local traders offering ivory tusks, leopard skins, and gold nuggets. The air thick with the sounds of bargaining, the clinking of goods exchanged, the laughter of children running between the stalls. This was a city alive, connected, global centuries before the modern world imagined globalization. But Great Zimbabwe was more than stone and trade. It was a society with beliefs, rituals, and symbols that gave meaning to life. The Shona people believed deeply in the power of their ancestors. The spirits of the dead were not gone. They were guides, guardians, and intermediaries between the living and the divine. Rain-making ceremonies ensured crops would grow. Rituals ensured harmony between earth and spirit. The king, the Mambo, was more than a ruler. He was a spiritual figure, a mediator who kept balance. His authority rested not just on wealth, but on sacred duty. Within the city, symbols reinforced this order. The soapstone birds, carved with care and precision, were more than ornaments. They represented unity, vision, and divine guardianship. Today, they stand as national symbols on Zimbabwe's flag, a reminder of an ancient legacy. Let's dig even deeper. For every great civilization, there is a moment of decline. By the late 15th century, Great Zimbabwe began to fade. Why? The reasons remain debated. Perhaps the growing population strained the land. Too many cattle may have overgrazed the fields. Too many trees may have been cut down to fire kilns and smelters. Perhaps drought weakened agriculture. Perhaps new trade routes bypassed the city, shifting wealth to rising powers like the Mutapa Kingdom to the north. Whatever the cause, people began to leave. The city that once rang with trade and laughter grew quiet. By the 16th century, the Great Walls stood largely abandoned, silent witnesses to a glorious past. Grass grew between the stones, and the wind whispered where once kings commanded. Centuries later, when Europeans arrived, they could not believe that Africans had built such monuments. Their worldview simply did not allow it. Cecil Rhodes and his men spread myths. They claimed Phoenicians had built the city. Others said it was a palace of the Queen of Sheba or King Solomon, anything but African hands. Archaeologists who dared suggest African origins faced censorship. Reports were suppressed. The truth was buried under colonial propaganda. For colonizers, to admit that Africans had built Great Zimbabwe was dangerous. It challenged the racist ideology that justified conquest. But stones do not lie. The pottery, the tools, the oral traditions all pointed clearly to the Shona. By the mid-20th century, evidence had overwhelmed myth. Scholars proved what local people had always known: Great Zimbabwe was African. It was built by the Shona, by their skill, their labor, their vision. And today, the world recognizes it. Great Zimbabwe is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, celebrated as one of Africa's greatest achievements. Its soapstone birds fly proudly on Zimbabwe's national flag. Its name defines an entire nation. Yet the ruins are more than stones. They are reminders. Reminders that Africa's history did not begin with colonialism. That long before foreign empires drew borders and built railways, Africans built kingdoms, traded across oceans, and raised monuments that still stand. Great Zimbabwe teaches us that history is often silenced, sometimes denied, but never destroyed. The stones endure, and so does the story. So as the sun sets over the granite hills and the last light catches the ancient walls, let us remember, this is not just the story of a ruined city. It is the story of resilience, of creativity, of a people who shaped their world with vision and power. It is the story of Great Zimbabwe, a hidden history reclaimed. This is Wisdom Archives. Thank you for joining me. And remember, every stone has a story if only we choose to listen. If you are watching from YouTube, please subscribe and like. And if you are watching from other places, don't forget to follow and share, because it inspires us to dig deeply in search of the hidden truth.